We are live. Let me share my screen. 1 second. Okay. You guys see my screen okay?
Yeah.
So I haven't really been paying too much attention to the charts. I mean, obviously we're just coming out of the holidays, second of the year now. I wanted to give everybody a day off, from New Year's. Got overly excited. I'm not gonna lie. One of the first things that I looked at just after midnight on New Year's Eve, like one of the first things I looked at, you could probably take a guess. I remembered that the yearly pivots populated, so I got really excited. And yeah, so this stream is going to be basically about setting up our year, and this is going to be really focused on higher time frame stuff. We'll go over some lower time frame stuff as well, probably to start, because I think we actually had, for those of you who were trading, I think you probably know where I'm going with this already, but we had a really, really, really nice setup a couple days ago. That's kind of leading into this rise that we're seeing right now. So we'll talk about kind of lower time frame stuff to start, and then transition into higher time frame stuff. Talk about where kind of like, and it really it's just like it's a carryover of the previous streams that we've had, but now that we're in 2025, things are kind of shaping up. These are kind of following the path that I kind of like what we've been talking about for some time now, and we're starting to really see things shape up. So this is this is stream 148, and made me think about that for a minute. Like, I can't believe we've done this many streams. Excuse me. But I might actually make this one public because it's the first of the year. I might actually share this one. And, if time allows and whatnot, I do think be a lot more active on YouTube this year because I kind of miss it. But I'm taking some of my coffee here. So anyway, here is, man, kind of got a lot of like old levels on here. You guys can ignore this stuff because I didn't clean up my chart or anything. But I mean, right away, like the first thing that you could probably see is this is our new yearly pivot, and it's at 80K. And 80K, like I saw that and smiled because that is to me, that's a really significant area. And I do think, I do think that there's a pretty fair chance that we're going to see 80K. I just don't think it's going to be necessarily right now, but I think, I do think that the pivot will actually get hit this year. I don't know if I'm like spoiling my analysis or anything like that. I do think there's a good chance that it gets hit, but I think we're likely to kind of go higher first. At least from here, because this looks really good. So I'm going to clean out my chart. Just give me a second here to figure out what the hell I was doing. It's the last time, that I looked at this. Hello. I'm gonna go ahead and delete these for right now, because it's kind of in the way. Maybe I'll leave that. From the low like that. This is from lower time frame. Time frame. This is the old daily that I can actually shift up to here. No. This quarterly is old now. It obviously closed cleanly above that. 70K, really important level. I don't know if it's so important anymore. Old weekly. We'll just delete all of these because these are old levels. This one's probably still accurate. All right. So here locally, I'm gonna actually clean this one up a bit. Maybe there's a little bit less. So look, all that we've done so far is really just form a range, right? We're just forming another range, another consolidation. Price has held up really pretty well, down at the range low here, and there's no, you know, there's a lot of panic probably like when we did this SFP. And this was like the setup that I was talking about, right? So like kind of what I was leading to that we had a few days ago was you actually had a run of these lows, right? Um, yeah, so this low here, hold on a second. So this low on December 5th, right here, was 92,055, right? This low here on Friday the 20th, which it's like an equal low. It basically is an equal low. But it did not take this low out. It was like 50 bucks higher, right? So you see you have kind of a low. You have like the ultimate low here. But you have a nice crazy looking candle here, right? Big wick to the upside, big wick to the downside. We came and tested the bottom side of the December 5th low, pushed up a bit, came back down again. You see like we made a slightly higher high here, slightly higher high here. I'm talking about like the lows of these candles. And then finally on the 30th, you get your classic SFP on like a daily time frame, right? We see we came down, we took out all these all the stops below here, nice move down, and then a really, you close back inside the range again. You goes back inside above this anchor VWAP, even like really, really good area. And then since then, we've had a nice move up. So that is something that I really like to see in terms of seeing this kind of continuation move to the upside. And then if you've kind of been following, I'm gonna have to find it, but it's this, right? So if you've been kind of following um, the super trend that we've, been using for a long, long time, but we've been kind of talking about this on our streams lately. When you actually did get your buy signal, and this is on the daily time frame, right? So you got your last buy signal, your support, basically like where you want to see your support held, don't want to see any closures below, held up really, really nicely on its test, move to the upside. So overall, I do like this low. If you're long anywhere below, or I'm sorry, if you're long anywhere, from this region, I do think that that's a pretty good, like this is a good level to kind of base your risk off of, because there's really not much of a reason to go back below. I mean, if we went back below here anytime soon, I would be a little bit worried about, basically that yearly pivot getting hit. Which I do think that I don't think that's the likely course of action from where we stand. I think that we're, if anything, I'm more bullish, and I think that we're probably going to make. I think we're basing here, trying to make another attempt at a high. It's kind of the spoiler, I guess I would say. But for now, we're just range bound. I'll like pull it from here. It's gonna have to be perfect. But yeah, just ranging, nothing super crazy. If you're scalping, I think it's perfectly fine to be trading the range as normal. We've been in this range now, really since the end of November. So it's again another really nice consolidation. And so this is just like kind of this current pull, just kind of like slightly. I put a little slightly upward. You actually see something here. You could use that. Here's how that would look. Better. better. Yeah. Um, so yeah, I mean, again, like this is gonna be more of like a higher time frame stream. I'm not gonna fuss or worry too much about like what's necessarily happening here. I mean, we'll follow up like next week, I'm sure. But for now, again, this looks fine. This looks good. Nice consolidation. Nothing really overly concerning happening here. It's bouncing where it should. You know, we have a very clean, clear high at 108 now. You know, I do think that if you're looking for, you know, if you're looking for like a you know lower time frame opportunity, what's been really good so far is the middle of this channel, right? So you kind of have, you know, you have like the highs and the lows of your range. I would say are very cleanly defined now. You have, you know, two lows, one very clean high, which I think is going to be a really important level going forward. Um, but you know, the midpoint of the range has got really good interplay between these, even just these candles on a daily time frame. Very clean highs, very clean lows. Not too much washing out. Like here, even on this move down, reclaim the midpoint of the channel holding a support before it made its high. Lost the midpoint of the channel, came back, resistance test, right? Like, so I'd say the midpoint actually, like, I mean, which it's just under 100K, but really, really, really good channel to pay attention to. And this is the old, so like this key level here was your SFP level, right? So like if you had this, like now I can take it off. But this 92,055, that was the fifth low. That's why it was marked as a key level to begin with. But again, you got two really close attempts at running the low, didn't get it, came back up to the midpoint of this channel, and then you took it, right? So now this, I mean, even this level is old news now. But arguably, again, if you're looking to trade this range, if you expect this range to continue, you know, you really want to see kind of around that 92.5 hold, right? Like you want to, you know, but like you could be taking risk there if this does kind of, you know, if this kind of peels back from here and gives you another test, I probably wouldn't like it that much, but again, it's support until it's not. So like you could, and the risk would be, you know, I think the risk reward would be really good to take along there. I just think that the odds of you getting stopped on a move like that would be, seems like it'd be a little higher than I'd probably like. But either way, again, it's support until it's not. So far, the lows of the range, you can even draw, um, you know, you can draw a nice zone here, nice SR zone. So I think it's perfectly fine. So it's basically like using, you see where like this daily level was, right? So you have daily moves up, comes back, gives you the back test of it, makes a new high. Where all your wicks are, wick into this, looks perfectly fine. You can draw this as a zone if you want. This is support until it's not. You start to get closures, you know, again, below here, if you get a daily close below this green box, and I think you got, you know, maybe, and I wouldn't say necessarily like massive problems, but I think the odds of us coming down to tag this pivot are really high. So would you want to continue to be long here if you saw that? If you think the odds of you being able to rebuy it at 80K or even probably slightly lower, you know, that's the decision you'd have to make. But to me, it would seem pretty good, a pretty good chance that we would actually come down to tag this pivot. But not, again, for me, not like the kind of the main scenario that I guess I would be looking at. Does anybody have any questions about this before I move to like higher time frame stuff? No? So just a quick recap, basically, range. Nothing fancy. To me, this is really well-defined support at this point. You don't want to see it lost, especially close below that. Close below this, probably coming down to 80K, which could be I mean, that could be a very, very, very good opportunity to revisit longs, right? You kind of like this anchored VWAP coming in from the low as well, kind of starting to come into this region. But yeah, this pivot looks pretty good. You really, really, let's say you probably don't want to see Bitcoin below 73, which is its prior all-time high, right? And again, really good level. You know, it's one of the prior all-time highs, of course, but like this one to me is very important, very nice technical level where you have your high 8-month consolidation underneath, you come up to test the other side of it, gets rejected, and then you break it, right? So it's like this to me is a very clutch level. It's a very important one. Could we come down to revisit that? Yes. Does it seem very likely? No. But if we did for some reason, that is absolutely a level I want to see held. Otherwise, we're going to have bigger problems if that's the case. Again, I don't think that's very likely. But again, if we lost that, and especially had on a closing basis, I do think then you'd be looking lower, right? I don't want to get like overly bearish because I think that's not, you know, I'm not bearish. I'm just saying I'm going through scenarios right now of like what I think would likely be the case. You lose 73, I think we're probably coming down. The S-Wag again, the pivot lines up so well. I love where these pivots line up. Which at this current high, okay, so you're taking it from the low to the high, moving back down to 51 would give you like a god tier 618 play, right? Again, not, I don't think that's the likely scenario, but let's assume that the high is in already. Like we've seen the high, we just don't really know it yet. Which again, I don't think is likely, but if that's the case, then this level becomes like a phenomenal play for 2025, right? So again, I'm trying to set us up for the year and give you some levels to think about. I don't see that as being a very strong possibility. At least to come, like I do think that the high isn't in yet. I think that we're probably going to come up and at least make another slightly higher high at you know, I would say at worst. But you have to be thinking in the back of your mind, if your plan doesn't work out, what's the, like, what is that likely to mean, right? You have to be able, I'd say you got to be quick on your feet to transition to say, like, again, if your bullish scenario doesn't work out and things start breaking down, looking worse than you anticipated, you have to be prepared to trade whatever that is, right? So that's why, like, I feel like I go through a lot of different scenarios, but it's giving you, like, if my plan and the way that I look to trade this doesn't work, my bullish thesis is invalidated. What does that mean? That means that there's almost always going to be a trade on the other side of that, right? Like if my bullish thesis it gets invalidated, I already am ready like to flip and say, okay, well that didn't work. Like this is invalidated. What's likely to happen now then? So if we aren't going up, we're probably going down. Where are we going down to? So that's, you know, again, don't think it's as likely. But that, I do think 80K, if we're given that, if we're given 80K sometime in the next, I would say like, you know, if you see 80K in January, I think that's a really good buy. I'm not financial advice for it. I think it's a good area to look for, you know, opportunities. Where are you wrong on that? I would say that your invalidation probably below 73. So like one thing, and I haven't done this, so honestly I have no idea. You could pull it from here. So from the very low, if this was the high or 618, it would actually come in around 71. So that I don't really like. Don't really like that. From here, it is, holy crap. So again, from the very low, it basically is where your 6.6 would be if you pull it from like the start of this entire like parabolic move, right? Like it was literally up only from here, which is a valid fair pull. It puts you right at this key level. Again, I don't anticipate that. So okay, geez. So for this pull, 618 lines up literally with your prior all-time high. I just don't, I think like that would be a sign of weakness if we saw that. I don't think that that's the most bullish play. Although low time frame reaction, could you get like, you know, if you lose 80K, you come down here, bounce, maybe retest it, the underside of the pivot, something like that. I think that like that's very possible. But I wouldn't necessarily be saying, oh, the bottom's in then. It just wouldn't look very good. It would definitely be like a, you know, a change of behavior, I guess you could say. But from a technical perspective, that actually does look really good. I just would treat that as like a shorter term trade, look to take profit, move by stop up, and call it good if it worked out, right? But again, this is assuming that the high's in. We look really good in the bottom of the range, had a clean SFP, nice response to that. So at the moment, we look pretty good. So kind of going back to like this range, you get above the midpoint. And again, I think you have like a nice potential scalp coming into your 618, right? We like those. But being above the midpoint of this channel, it just seems really likely at that point that you're going to make another rotation. But I think you could, for you scalpers, I think that you have a really nice setup here. Two strong points, literally the current all-time high and the SFP low, really two great anchor points for that. Would think a reaction at the 618, somewhere in this golden pocket, likely. But like it could just be for a scalp, right? So let's say that this continues. And then maybe it gives you the back test of the channel midpoint before going higher, something like that. But like you could still scalp that, right? Like that's kind of like what my trade would look like for that. But yeah, so for this current fib, assuming that the high is in for now, and again, it could just, you know, be in for the next month or two, let's say, and like these levels are still going to be valid. Doesn't necessarily mean that all-time high is in. But I do like where these are lining up. Golden pocket lining up literally, you know, your 618 on the prior all-time high, which I already said I don't love that. I don't like how that looks, but it's very, very nice confluence. The 50% retracement, which I think is more likely, is literally your pivot. That's great. It's really good. So yeah. Anybody have any questions so far? Feel free to interrupt me, stop me. I'm kind of rambling, but I'm just kind of going over things as I see them. And I did very, very little preparation for this, by the way. So, and it's for a reason, because I want to see this. You know, I mean, I don't know how much you guys have been looking at charts like the last week or so, but I haven't really been. I've been busy, like, you know, family time. By the way, hope everybody had a great New Year's and a great Christmas. Um, but you know, I kind of wanted to look at this like with fresh eyes, right? Like, I don't really want to have a ton of like pre-done analysis and my thought. Like, I want like this is literally that's kind of why I think it's coming out. You know, I'm kind of rambling a little bit because that's I haven't seen it yet. So bear with me. You're getting the unfiltered, like, you know, this is haven't had a chance to formulate my thoughts. I'm doing it right now live. So um I would say, like, so does anybody have any questions about the downside potential? To me, I think it like this actually is very, very clear. Um to me it's very clear. I haven't talked about this daily, and yes, there's a daily here. I don't really love the placement of it, but I could see that coming into play and kind of front running this. Like I could see that. It's definitely something I'd be watching, especially if you have really good confluence around this daily for, you know, where you could have a variety of things, measured moves, et cetera, that maybe might put you there. I don't think it's that significant of a level yet. I do think that if we lose this box, especially get it closed below, it just seems a bit more likely that we're going to have a deeper retracement than here. But I would kind of keep an eye on it. One reason you would is if you see something like this. So let's say I'll give you a scenario. And there's probably going to be a lot of scenarios because again, we're talking about 2025. We're not talking about what the hell I think's going to happen over the next 24 hours. That's like what all our other streams are, right? This is going to be giving you as many setups as I could and like reasons for things doing what they are and like what I would think about that. So here, let's say that you just kind of keep being range bound, something like that, come down and give you another test. Like if you do come down here, this daily level is still valid. It hasn't been tapped, hasn't been hit yet. What I could see that would be bullish So you get a close below this green box, not good. We'll say that's not good. If this daily or somewhere close by got tapped and actually held, and then you get a reclaim, you get acceptance back inside the range, right? Then you have another trade setup, another long trade, which that would, again, likely be, the way that this range is shaping up so far, this is kind of like jumping ahead a lot, but this is anticipating like what could come, right? Then you have your deviation below your range, acceptance back inside. When you get your reclaim like this, looking for your long here, and you're looking to take it up to the midpoint and the high of the range, right? So you have another long setup, cleared validation below wherever, again, if it was happened to be this daily, something like that, that's another really, really good trade opportunity. If that's given. I don't see that as one that's as likely, but I'm giving you a case for why I would still mark this daily off. And it's really kind of like you have this impulsive move. This is the first area where you started to consolidate before you gave, again, for me, the range is here. It doesn't really include this, but you can see that there was some volume built up here. You think that, there was some consolidation. You could see this region, especially on like some kind of big nuke. If it comes from higher levels and we just have like a big nuke for whatever reason, this is an area where you would expect there to be some support, right? Like we did spend a week here before we actually started to push up and then are kind of like creating this larger range. But like it's not, I wouldn't say this daily is that important if it was like, something like we just spent a little bit of time here before we continued. We actually did build a little bit of a base here. So that's why I could see that happening. I just don't think it's as likely. So Dave said, he asked, do you think we're in the 30 or 40K of last cycle now, but it's 90? Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, I'll get to that. I'll get to that later in the stream, like kind of like where I think we are. And I'll tell you like one thing that is likely to kind of give us a bit of a maybe a peak. There's not that many instances of it, but we're getting into the Fib time that we've been watching for a really long time now. Again, we're in 2025 now. We're getting into the part of the cycle arguably that matters. That is like, this is kind of like, if I had to guess, maybe, I don't know, I'll save it. We're about to get there. I'm just going to wrap up, I guess. So again, lower time frame stuff, these are trades, ideas that I think could happen maybe, like as far as your 618, as far as even a deviation below this range low, like we're much closer to those. Those are kind of like the two options that we have right now. The deviation below here, I wouldn't like, I'll tell you where I would be looking for that. And I think the odds of that actually being a successful trade increase a lot is we want to spend a lot more time in this range, basically, like, which could happen. But like, I want to see us in this range for like 3 months for this to be a play that I would that I would love to see and get very long. And like I'd want to see this range mature a lot more than it did. Not that we need to spend 8 months here, but just I would want to see this range develop on an even longer time frame to get that kind of a play. Then I think, yes, that play is really valid. The fact that we just ran the low a couple days ago, if we come back down here, again, it doesn't mean that it can't work, but it's just, it would seem less likely that you would necessarily be looking for that setup. I just think that, the path of least resistance at that point would probably be coming up, tagging this pivot at least, and, somewhere in this region, probably giving you a really nice bounce at first, first attack. I don't know. Like, I think that if I'm looking for an area to look for tad risk, this is pretty good for me. You start to get below this 73K, again, prior all-time high. It just doesn't look very good. Like, I'm long at 80, 70, mids, I'd say like 77 to 80, 81, even somewhere in this region. There's a nice zone. You start to lose this, it's not. I just think the odds of having a much deeper move for whatever reason, that would likely mean the highs in. But Yeah, just you wouldn't. For me, I wouldn't want to remain long if I thought that the odds of the floor dropping out are much higher, right? Yeah, please, Goozy, please, God, not another 8-month range. No, I'm with you on that. I don't think that we will. And again, I'm getting into that. I don't think that's a likely outcome. But what I was just saying for this potential, that you're looking for the deviation into support, reclaim, that type of stuff. Like, I'd want to see a longer range for that play. Like, that's kind of like that would check the box for me and say, if I see this, the odds of that trade working out are much higher. Like, that's kind of what I'd want to see to happen in order for that trade setup to be like extremely valid, and I'm getting really excited about it and whatnot. But we're a little bit ways away from that. So I talked a lot about downside early, like so far. Talked a lot about downside. Um, but like I've said a few times, I don't really expect that. I don't expect that to be the case. But if we lose this zone, to me, that's the gatekeeper for keeping us within this range, right? Getting like we lose that, you have to be looking lower. You just have to. Unless you get the deviation play, but like you have to be looking lower. If that's the case, like be prepared for it, right? And again, maybe there's trades on the other side of this. Like, what if you lose this? Not that you really want to be that late to the party in terms of shorts, but maybe you find some kind of low time frame, nice risk reward short on a loss. Again, maybe we range here for just a little bit. And your invalidation on something like that would just be reclaiming the range, right? That if you're short, pops back up inside the range, probably close that. I don't like those kinds of trades because you should have been short earlier. You know what I mean? Like, there's probably going to be, that's kind of my point, is like if we come up into the 618 on this pull, like you might have a chance to get a really nice short fill here anyway. Take profit one for me, it'd probably be the bottom. I'm sorry, the midpoint of the channel. You lose that, then it's like you have a bit more weakness on your hands, right? But it's like, I like that. Take profit one, move your stop at entry. Then if this thing kind of just starts rolling over, guess what? You're in a phenomenal short position. But like that's the kind of stuff I like to try to be in, versus like shorting on weakness, unless it's like extreme weakness, right? But like it's kind of like a recipe for getting wrecked. But again, going below here wouldn't be good. So anyway, I'm going to switch to a different chart. Kind of go down the line, unless anybody has any questions. Yeah, Dave, seriously, maybe ETH would actually start to do something. We'll probably look at ETH. We'll see how much time we have later on, but we'll probably take a look at ETH. It was doing a few interesting things, but it's back to kind of being not very interesting again. But it was trying for a bit, and I noticed some alts, Litecoin was one of them. That was like doing its own thing for a little bit. Sol looks really good. Again, it's having a fair amount of strength today. That I actually have been trading quite a bit. But man, yeah. Anyway, I don't want to get too sidetracked. 1 second. Okay. And we can always go back. So the only thing I'd say about this is, again, coming into support, holding up a support, getting a nice move. That's all I'd say. So like, to me, checks the box. This is good. In terms of looking for continuation to the upside. So all right. So your daily Kijun is at that daily. So in terms of in terms of why is it doing that? Oh yeah, here. So in terms of confluence, I might have front ran myself a little bit. But for the time being, which this Kijun is looking like it's going to be moving up very soon, for the time being, if we did get a quick nuke down here, that actually would be a really good buy. I take that back. Why? Because it's your daily Kijun. So, and daily Kijun coupled with daily SR level there, so you have really nice confluence. I don't think that's the case, but Like that would be a good buy. That would be a good opportunity. So I do take that back. But it's only going to be, the thing about that is it's only going to likely be a trade for the next couple of days. It just doesn't seem very likely. You get that in the next 2 days or whatever, sure. Like that probably actually I that is a good opportunity. Um, but your window is extremely short for that trade. Everybody clear on that? So we have like, if we're going to see 87, it's going to be within the next couple of days. In terms of like what is longable for that, like what if you see a flush down there, could be a really nice opportunity. Um, doesn't seem very it doesn't seem very likely. If anything, on the 30th, like when we were coming down to this low, like that would have been a much better time to have done that. So
when you say only the next couple of days, is it because the Kijun's moving up? Is that what you're
correct,
talking about?
yeah,
or what is the limiter?
it's exactly it. Because so right now, like the Kijun is confluent with the daily level, right? Like this is really nice, but you can see from like the forecasting dots that like this current kind of like C clamp that we have, right? There's a lot of like when you have price lose your tenkin like that, you're naturally looking for the full mean reversion. This isn't likely to happen this time. But if it does, it's going to be in the next couple of days. Like, I mean, like this is going to move up. Basically, like this is going to move up to meet price at this point. But if you're looking for a trade from 87, you have a couple of days to get that. That's basically what I'm saying. Like, I think that like that. Otherwise, the confluence goes away, and then 87, honestly looks a lot worse. So it kind of goes back. It kind of goes back to that level not holding up like I'd want it. You know what I mean? Like that's good. That to me kind of confirm. Well, it isn't a confirm, but it adds more strength to my argument earlier about 87 not being a key level. Like it is. I do think now. I think 87 is a good level for like the next couple days. Then once you have this move up, right? If price is drastically below where your daily Kijun is, that's different problems. And if it starts to happen inside a cloud over the next 30 days, you see how that's like worse? Like that's not bullish. That's not exciting if that happens. Which by the way, not to jump too far ahead. Where's the bottom of the cloud right now? That's nice. So what it like again, as far as Ichimoku goes, I would say the confluence as we see it right now for these levels are really good. You have a couple of days for this 87K to what I would say be like really relevant. Once your Kijun starts moving up, where is it forecasting to move to? The bottom of this green support zone. Very good, right? If you start to close below your Kijun, so again, let's say Kijun moves up, price loses Kijun, you start to close inside a cloud, your TK lines are going to be way closer together. What's that leading towards? Move to 80. So like, again, this is really jumping ahead, but I think Ichimoku is spelling it out really easily right now. Like it's showing you your support and resistance already for the next 30 days. Like this maps out. Like and honestly, I didn't look at that. But everything that I said up until this point, like I double down now. Like I love that. It's very confluent with what I've said so far. So Barracuda said, if Kijun comes up to green support area, could that make a long from that region look good? Yes. Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, like it will basically be giving you more of a reason for support at the bottom of the range, right? So like if the range is going to continue, and Kijun comes up to meet price in this instance, right? Like it's going to continue to come up and meet price because you're losing these prior candles. That's why this is going to start to move up. Or at least like when I'm kind of curious, like where is this measured from now? Yeah. So here, so it's going to start creeping up. Yeah. So you're going to start losing these lows, which basically means that your Kijun is going to start moving up pretty drastically. which gives you a few scenarios. But again, I'll tell you that, and judging kind of like the way that things are going at the moment, to me, that's like this coming up to support price. It's more bullish than it is bearish, I would say. I don't necessarily think that we're going to spend a ton of time. Like, I don't expect an 8-month range here. I'll just say it. I think it's more likely that we continue our journey. But to the downside, though, these levels to me are very clear, and they're mapped out, set in stone until February 1st right now. Like, these levels aren't going to change. I'm talking about the cloud. Like, this is what you see here up until this point is what it is. So again, for the next couple of days, I like 87K for a long. I don't think we're going to see that though. If we did for some reason, that would, you think about what that would do to people if we saw 87K in the next couple of days. People would probably be very, 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 very bearish, right? So I kind of like that. 80K bottom of cloud flattening out here, love that. Perfectly aligns. I mean, it's like by a few $100, but like, you know, it aligns very well with your yearly pivot. So I do like that. And I like that over the next couple of days, though, if you don't see 87K, your Kijun's going to start to line up with, you know, giving you a bit more support for the bottom of the range. I like that. But really, yeah, it's been a nice consolidation so far. I don't expect to spend a ton of time in this range. A ton more time. What am I on? Oh, I went back to the main chart. Oh, that's why, because of this. Holy crap, are we on to this now? I think we might be on to this. Okay. So, before I leave this cluttered chart, I should have cleaned up before I started. Does anybody have any questions before I move to even higher time frame stuff? I'll give it just a sec. No questions? I can't be doing that good of a job. One. All right. Oh, okay. So here I had, you know, I'd say a month ago, kind of like when we were coming up into this region, I know I was having like a private chat, Tig's in here, like we were going through this, and I had a really clear picture in my head. So now I'm gonna kind of have to redo, or you know, remember everything that I said, as I had a pretty decent clear plan in my head, but I didn't like write it down, like I do sometimes. So I'm gonna have to try to re-go over this again. But there are some really important points, and I think that if you're gonna take anything away from today's stream, the pivots are important, yes, which is why I like to do these streams at the beginning of the year like this, to map them out, because I do think that they're very confluent. But the main thing I think that is of importance is probably the time. And I just think it's really interesting that we're about to get into that, of like the timing of everything, and how, like, you know, I think that I feel a bit more comfortable like talking about time. I mean, we're obviously a lot closer to it, right? Last year when we were going over this stuff, you know, months ago, it felt really far away, so it's hard to like have a good opinion of like what you think is going to happen, right? It's like you can, and like I mean, it doesn't change, you know, no matter how far away these levels are time wise, it doesn't change that, like they don't change, right? But just like now that we're closer and we're kind of like in the middle of the cycle, or like we're like, you know, we're definitely in it. These dates become way more apparent when you're like lined up with the same year, as you know, it's a little different. So I'm going to start from the very beginning with this. So now we're going to switch gears to time, because I think that this is very relevant and very important. So if you remember, the last cycle, okay, 2021, you had the last Fib Time pull that I did. So your trend-based Fib Time pull, it's kind of hard to see, but it's basically like the last cycle. You know, it was this entire run up. And it's hard to see because you're on so like, you know, log scale, you can see it. But I mean, you know, 2015 all the way up until our 2017 high down to our low. Okay. So that last pull using cycle lows and cycle highs gave you really interesting things that again were mapped out well in advance, right? Like these pulls, you know that this is the high. You obviously know that that was a cycle low. You obviously know that 2017 top word is. You obviously know that the low of this was in like well after, you know, like once you start to move up and you know that that's like the cycle lows in, you can map it out. Sorry, if you can't tell, I'm getting over being sick, so I apologize like if I'm like coughing and stuff like that, but I'm not at my best like voice, you know. So anyway, um using those pulls, it gives you future dates. So let's go over what those future dates did. So it gives you the 618 of that pull. Okay. So I hope you guys are really, I know I've been over this part before, but this kind of translates into what I'm going to talk about after this. So the 618 of the pull, it was the very beginning, essentially. It was like the end of this consolidation, beginning of this parabolic run. Okay. So you have to remember that. 618 gave you the beginning of this run where shit started to go crazy. Which was in, what was this, September? And these are oh jeez, I have these on daily. These on daily. It might be a little easier to do weekly. Yeah, it'll be a little easier to see that. Much easier. So anyway, it gave you like the very beginning of this parabolic move to the upside. Your one-to-one of this top, right? Although the one-to-one of this fib pull, it was literally the high of last cycle. So using prior cycle lows and highs in time gave you the high of the next cycle. Now, could that be a massive coincidence? Absolutely. Like, absolutely. Like, because there's just not very many instances of it, right? It's like these things take freaking years, like, to pan out. Could it, like, yes, it's, you know, it's like, so how valuable is this information? Honestly, don't know. I think it's pretty valuable, but it's not like there's, you know, 50 or 100 instances of this where you can say, okay, you know, 82% of the time this is true or whatever. Like, you have, there's not much data. But again, kind of the interesting part about this pool was, and this is kind of like where, you know, things start to change shape. Okay. So the one-to-one of that pool was your high. Holy shit. That's wild. Okay. 618 parabolic move, one-to-one, all-time high. Nasty, crazy pullback. The 1.618, same pull. Beginning of the parabolic run. End of this range, parabolic move. 2, not a high. So again, these dates, to be clear, are trying to give you levels time-wise to look at for an event of some sort. It's like around this time is, you know, you're measuring time, and you're saying that like I would say that like the odds of it being an important time in this asset's like where this asset is high, right? It's higher than normal. It's not normal dates. So the two gave you, arguably like it wasn't the high or low. This to me is like, you could make a case for it, but it didn't do anything like overly, like perfectly significant, I would say. But it was basically, again, you have like, we passed this date and it just went vertical. So interesting. Like to me, I would say that this so far, this fib pool, okay, you could make an argument that the 4 dates that have happened so far that are relevant, you're 4 for 4. I would certainly say 3 for 4, or like 3.5 out of 4, because like this is, but again, time consolidation, candle moves into this date, vertical. So I don't know. You be the judge of that. I would say 3.5, 4, 4. Like so far, very very good. Now this, is this going to continue to give you really relevant dates going forward? I don't know. I mean, it's worked really well so far, but for me, the next date of interest isn't until 2026. That's too far for me. I mean, it's not too far, but it's the middle of 2026. It is like you're way this. So what I would say is, if you're been monitoring this pull with me and using this pull, I would have it on your. It's fine to keep tabs of, but like, you're a long ways away from that being relevant again. Okay, but I want you to remember the relationship between using important points, right? Especially cycle highs and cycle lows, and looking ahead, because it kind of has a tendency to prime, has a tendency to come back into play. So this is I call this the 2021 cycle top, because it literally called it. Like it literally was the high. It was literally the high, the 1-to-1. So I'm gonna close this. I just want you to remember that. Okay. I think I can finally get rid of this. I just leave this because I think it's funny. I'm going, it's like I drew, didn't give me like a perfect cup and handle, but it just like where it even ended was funny. I mean, I can probably remove this, but I'm a little sad now because I was like, oh, I have a little volume thing here and get rid of. Okay. Lucy, oh God, we are going to range until, but yeah, please no. Please no. So again, keep in mind what we just went over. So now, current cycle, okay? This is using the same logic. It's the same pull. You're just moving it up a cycle. So you're using the low of last cycle. You're using the high of last cycle and the low of the current cycle, right? This is like the 618. If you remember the last time, it was the beginning of the parabolic move. So we went over this a long time ago before this happened. But the 618 was the beginning of the parabolic move. It's interesting, right? It wasn't like the wick low, but basically, again, once you came into it, vertical, just straight up, like literally from here, if you zoom in, right? Green bar, vertical, as you come into this. So now all of you have already put 2 and 2 together, I'm sure, and are like, oh shit, what's the 1-to-1 mean? Well, last time, so again, just to go back, the 2021, price came into your 618, vertical. What happened when price came to the 1-to-1 in November, by the way? Oh shit, probably a good time to not be long anymore. So remember the months, remember the fib. 618 came into it, parabolic. 1-to-1, late October. I just think so far, and again, it doesn't have to follow it exactly. But if you had to ask me right now, gun to my head, when is this cycle, like, when is there going to be a significant high? My cursor would move to October. So it doesn't have to be perfect, but it is, to me, this has mirrored. It's like mirrored same behavior. I just don't, and again, even the time, you look at the time of year, fourth quarter, late October, last cycle was early November. It's just interesting. It's like, it's interesting. Let's just say that. So if I had to pick a date, right, of like where I would seriously want to, I would really, we'll see where we're at when we get into, we get closer, but that's definitely a date on my mind that I won't forget about. And I just think so far it's played out about as well as I could have thought in terms of comparisons, right? Again, we don't have a lot of data. Even this is not that significant in terms of like I love to see 100 instances of this to make a judgment on whether or not, like, how reliable is this. But this is hard to ignore, right? It's really hard to ignore. So again, looking at 2025, and you could start to put things in place. I would say, like I said, if you're going to take anything away from today, I would say that, like, time is keeping time, these dates on your chart, could end up being pretty helpful. But I don't know. This one definitely was. Will the 1-to-1 be? I'll just say that I wouldn't be shocked. Will it happen? I don't know, but I won't be surprised if it does. And that would be like a freaking insane lineup, right? Like, can you imagine that? That would be like an insane thing that played out. So, and then the last thing. So this is kind of like where we currently are, right? We're basically within this zone of time where, if you go back to last cycle, a lot of things happened. Okay? A lot of things happened. So you got the beginning of your parabolic move, but you also had, like, what was this, a 50 something percent retrace? Yeah, 56% retracement, and then a new all-time high, all within this same window. So from the time, the 618 went, when you passed that, started to get your move, I think kind of like what is interesting about that is we didn't come anywhere near those levels again. Especially like here, we didn't come close to it really, and certainly not before the cycle top was printed. So, like, switching that over, where did this happen? At 54. Remember how I said 51 was like a really good level? Which, by the way, for those of you who are looking at them, maybe you're following along with me, wondering why the hell the pivot isn't populating. It's because we haven't had a weekly close yet. We're still technically in last year. That makes sense? So it's when the weekly candle closes this week, then you'll see your new pivot populate. But if you go to a daily time frame, you'll see it already. So in case you're wondering, took me a second earlier. It's like, why the hell, like, can I not see it? Oh, it's because the candle hasn't closed yet. But yeah, so again, kind of like an interesting thing about that is, like, once you made this move up, you could get a pretty crazy retracement. But you didn't go below kind of like that point in time. That was a very, like, you don't expect to come back to those levels, which, by the way, again, like, further reinforces, it kind of like further reinforces for me that, like, that high 70s to low 80s, if we get that, I think it's just a good opportunity, because it would make sense, right? But you go below, like I said, what was it, 73 or whatever, you start to go below this level, which is like a prior all-time high, that would not look very good. But I mean, you could definitely make a case that like if this comes out down here and does something like this, that would be perfectly fine. Like there's nothing wrong with that. But again, just kind of like keeping in mind that I guess I can change this. That is an important level. But there was a lot of crazy shit that happened in between the 618 and the 1. Same like we are now. Who the hell knows what can happen? It doesn't really. So that's the thing about time, right? It doesn't matter what price is doing. It matters what price is doing when you come into it. That's it's like when you have good pulls, right? You don't just pull these anywhere. You have reasons for where you pull them. Just like fibs. I mean, same thing, right? Like you have 2 clear points or 3 clear points. You don't just pick random shit and hope that it works. But it's not price sensitive. It's not price direction. It's time. Like this week, something interesting. Like look at where you're at in terms of like higher time frame. What's is this like a good bottom? Is this like, holy crap, we've we're maybe in a range or something like that, and we're way higher than we were the last one. Who knows, right? But it's about so all right, so there's that. And then now this is a little different. So this is 2 points, and I know I've been over this one. But this is kind of like so this is your Fibonacci time zone, and this is going over so this is still last cycle. But the interesting thing about this is that I think that these have worked out really well as well. And it certainly got really close. So a little different pull. This is taking literally from last cycle low to last cycle high. The 1.618 of this was your low. It was the low, the exact low, which is mind-blowing. So again, like for people who like think fibs are bullshit, by the way, I could see how people think that, but I don't know, for some reason they just work, like they have a tendency to work really well. But anyway, the 1.618 of that was your cycle low, like our current cycle low. You move on. It gets a little, again, I don't know. The 2 kind of like gave you a nice top for a pullback. The 2.618, I would argue nothing. It's just like in the middle of range. And this was not very helpful. But the 3 is coming up at the end of March. March 10th is when this happens. The interesting thing about kind of like last cycle and where these fib times have lined up and the things that have happened so far with the current fib time pulls that we've had, they're like rhyme a lot, right? This last top, the first top, if you remember, was in April. We're literally looking at it. And for the top that I'm looking at was right here. Okay. So this top that got made, it was our first run to 65K before we had a disgusting, 56% just a pullback, guys. Then ended up making another new all-time high. What's interesting about that is I think something similar like this could happen this time around. I don't necessarily expect a 50% pullback though. Like I think that there's a lot of reasons for this, but I don't think it's likely to be this drastic. So again, the high was April. This is in March. So the 3 extension of this is in March. The thing about this particular date that stands out to me is it's a month, and Dave, you're exactly where I'm going with this in a minute. We did have a really good alt season around that, so it's not like doom and gloom. It's like, in fact, it's like if we get something similar to that, we're all going to be really happy. You know what I mean? Like we're all going to be very happy. But the thing about where this 3 extension comes in is that it's a month early, right? So again, it's March 10th versus April. I'm sorry. Where was that? April 12th. The 1-to-1 of this is in October. The all-time high last cycle was in November. So it's like interesting that like it's like things just shifted to be a bit earlier, essentially, is where I'm going with that. So if things are gonna rhyme, and I won't say it's perfect, what does this mean? Well, I think that the odds of us seeing a significant high in the first quarter are really high. And if I had to place a guess on where approximately, and by the way, guys, please don't take this as like Bible, like this is absolutely going to happen. I'm just giving you my theory. Like this is like what I think is kind of like what I'd be looking at. Now, like I'm going to preface this by saying, you know, when you're trading, I'll tell you that like for myself, as we're getting close to this date, we're already close to this date. The last date was in July. Now we're in, you know, we're in between that heading to a potential early March date of importance. What I'm saying is we're getting close to it already in terms of these times. So like what I'm saying from a trading standpoint is that let's say we make a new high, which is by the way why I think we make a new high. I don't think the high's in yet. Even looking at the structure of where we're currently at, even if we dip to 87, it would still be fine. If we were to dip to 80 even, it would be fine. I just think that, to me, the dip down to 80, high 70s, low 80s, I think that happens after March. I think we put another high in first, and then maybe we get that dip down there. So that's kind of what I think. But what I mean, like as we get closer to this date, your time frames go down. Right? Like you're trading on lower time frames because if you think you're kind of like nearing what it could be a local top, and maybe even a top for like a while, a few months or something like that, if you get something similar to this structure, right? Which it doesn't have to be like that. But it would be interesting that, you know, it would be kind of interesting, like, if that did play out. So, like, for me, the closer we get into where I think, like, a logical temporary high could be placed, but, like, it wasn't, I mean, this was a freaking significant high, right? That's a massive move to the downside. I don't expect this to be, I don't really expect a 56% pullback. But, I mean, something reasonable, like, you know, let's say that we went up to, you know, 117, 118 first. Like a 30% pullback is very reasonable. You understand what I mean? Like that's very reasonable. And that's huge. I was reading chat. But anyway, like that's so I guess I kind of just spilled it. Like kind of like what I think is areas that I'm interested in to the upside. I do think that we can it's really anything above 108. I think we make another high. When do I think we make that high? Man, let me tell you, if we make that high in the beginning of March, I don't even know what I'm going to say. You know, like I would be thrilled if that actually worked. I don't know if it will, but that's my initial thought is somewhere around then. I'd be really curious to see where Bitcoin's at that point. And if it's higher than we are now, I think like to me that would add even more confluence for like, okay, you need to be careful. You know, like at this point, maybe a good time to hedge. I'm not telling anybody what to do. I'm just telling you like what I'm thinking. I would be really, and you know, like if we're making new highs, especially like going into that time frame, people are gonna be really, really, really bullish, right? and we might have good reason to. Like, it doesn't mean that, again, like, just because things played out a certain way last time and things are really shaping up to play out to potentially like give you something similar doesn't mean that it's gonna happen. I mean, she's like, this thing could just keep going. You know what I mean? Like we could, and I'll give you another reason for this was like we could range here, maybe make a slightly new high early range, and then we get into this date, and then all of a sudden, we go to 300K. Like that's possible. I mean, that's possible. I don't think that that's the case necessarily, but I'm just saying like that's very possible. Like it's having like this March 10th date be a really important date after all, but it might not be like the high before a big flush. It could just be like we could range until March and then like absolutely full send. That's possible, so anyway, that's part of the reason why I say the closer we get to that date, the lower time frame I'm going to be trading to see like what to me makes sense. Does it look like do we have a serious sign of strength here? Like, are things looking really good, or do I see signs for the other? You know what I mean? Like, do I see like here? What would this sign have been, by the way? Well, you can freaking see it. We made a significantly new high. Look at your close, right? Like that, like you can see that this probably had a nice pullback. Do we see something similar? So we get into that. Do we have an SFP of some sort? Do we have, my guess is it presents itself and you'll see it. Doesn't mean that you think like, you might not think that that's the play, but in hindsight, it's going to look pretty obvious. Which is why I'm trying to go over this now, like kind of like what you could see around that time. If that did play out, then yeah, I'd probably put a bit more weight into that actually being a significant trade. So anyway, you have this window. So now you overlap it. And you have this window that I would say. Basically here. And I'm just drawing this box, okay? I don't really know. I mean, we'll get to some of these levels, but as far as time goes, this is like the same. Like you could, okay, that didn't work. There's a lot of things that can happen here. So like in between these two regions, right? A lot of crazy stuff happened. A lot of crazy stuff happened in between these two major pivots. It's the same thing. Like a lot of crazy shit can happen between now and October, right? A lot of things can happen. Like look at this. Like a lot of things can happen up until you got to your date, and then things just died. But then you overlap again this zone, and you can kind of see this window that we're working with, and what I think is going to be a really interesting season. But that's for later in the year. Did I miss something? Nope. So like here, if you remember, I know I was talking about, I had like one of these boxes here. You guys remember that? Where like, I don't really know what the hell is going to happen when you come into this region, but my guess is it's like something, like it's something that will, I don't know like which one of these lines. It's just you have this overlapping region. So this is like from several streams ago. What's going to happen? I don't know like what date is like more important. Well, it ended up being this one, the 618, right? Which, by the way, is a measure of our current cycle that we're in. So if you guys go back to that stream, which one of these 2 points do you think is more relevant to what like the current price action is doing? My argument would be the fresh pull. of our current cycle. So it would be this one, right? So if I had to pick one and say like what seems more relevant, it's probably this. So going back to, again, feel free to stop me if because I am kind of going all over the place. Feel free to stop me. We have like in March 10th, where I think that like it would be really interesting if we made a high somewhere around then, and then spent kind of like the bulk of this time doing crazy shit in between, having pullback, having a rip, that type of stuff. But if we just range, okay, so to give you like a really bullish scenario, which you're gonna be like, holy shit. So to give you like what I would say is like the ultra bullish scenario is that we actually don't have much of a pullback. To me, again, the pullback 88, 77 to 82, something like that, somewhere in that window would be really like, if you got that, I honestly think that's like a phenomenal opportunity. And I keep saying it. But the I would say depending on what we're doing going into the beginning of March, if it looks like, who knows, there could be crazy stuff happens. Bitcoin, reserves, this country is doing that. Who the hell knows? Like, there could be weird stuff that happens like that. Now, we already know it's already been talked about and priced in. But like, there could be some new developments with that like really get things going. To me, that doesn't change the fact of October being a critical date. And if anything, I think that would be like even more of a reason to be really careful in October. If we got like what I'm saying is like, let's say that this March 10th time frame, which by the way, would give Trump a bit of time to be in office at that point. But man, it would just be kind of interesting, like if we consolidate until then. And things look really good, nice huge base getting formed here, maybe enough fuel to like give us a serious leg, like maybe we have another parabolic move. I think that that's not as likely myself. I think what's more likely is kind of something similar to this, just a smaller scale. Like I think I'm kind of leaning like higher high pullback, and then something significant happening in October. That's basically it. So does anybody have any question on time? Because I think that basically wraps it up for time. Fibonacci time. Pretty clear. But I would say so far, we've been following this for a long time now, and it's worked. Like it's been significant. So I don't really expect that to change, I guess I would say. But for me, if I had to pick one day for this year, October 20th, mark that shit on your calendar and don't forget about it. Probably not going to want to forget about it. I would just say I would not want to I would not forget about that date, because if it's anything like what happened last cycle, what's happened this cycle so far, having the same freaking confluence with the 618 being the low before the parabolic move, like it is looking eerily similar. And again, we don't have enough data, historic data, to really make like a good, to like say with, a high degree of certainty that is likely to be the case. But holy shit, it's good. Like for me, I look at that, I'm like, that's serious. Like that's something worth watching. But yeah. So again, October 20th. And it's is that a Monday? Monday. Oof. Black Monday? October? I'm just kidding. Calm down. I'm just kidding. But yeah, who knows? That's kind of something that I'll be keeping an eye on. Yeah.
My family.
There is a different Paul, if you use the COVID crash. What
Yeah.
do you think about it?
So if you use the COVID crash instead, I remember, didn't we go over that? I like looked at two different pools, right? Or was this it?
Not today, but maybe last time.
This one. So this one was the COVID crash. This one. And I remember it was the very beginning of the rally until all-time high. So this one is that. So your Fib time zone is the COVID crash low to the high. So, and I think the reason why I picked that, you have to go back to that video, but I explained exactly why I picked that. But if I had to think now, like without like taking 15 minutes to like go through everything and break down why I picked that, it's literally like the COVID cycle, right? That makes sense, like to why you would measure it that way. But I know I explained fully why I did that last time. But yeah, it's basically like the COVID cycle. It was literally the COVID low. If you look at where this was pulled, it was COVID low to cycle high, which gave you these measurements. So I'm just taking a sip. So now I'm going to turn off time and go back to price. I can go back to this stuff too if you guys want. But I'm just trying to like get through it. Man, this is like a great Fib time update. Awesome. How much time are we at? Holy shit, an hour and 20 minutes and I haven't talked about anything but Bitcoin. My goodness. We might have to do a second. I think we're probably going to have to do a second stream on everything else because my guess is we're only going to get through Bitcoin today. Which I know is probably what most of us care about. And honestly, you can extrapolate a lot of what I said today. It's going to probably carry over into certainly alts. It's going to be the similar play. Although I will say that, like, I think ETH BTC, it doesn't look like we're probably going to be able to get into that. But like, maybe we'll do another stream very soon to go over ETH and alts and that type of stuff. Because it's just like Dave said, it's like you had a phenomenal alt season within these crazy periods, right? So like I think I would say that, like, that deserves its own stream though, because I don't have the voice today. I thought I would, and I was like really hoping to not sound like I do right now and be struggling, but I was originally anticipating like a pretty solid 3-hour stream or something stupid for how I am. But like, this is a big topic. But I'm definitely gonna have to split that up now. So anyway, moving on to price. Okay. There's a couple interesting things. So why is this relevant? Well, it's relevant because if I think that like the odds of us coming up to make a new high before maybe like a larger correction, I think that this channel that you're looking at is interesting in terms of that, and it's already been really interesting. So top, not Q2. Oh, well, so like local, well, what I would say is like a local to medium term top, and then a pullback, and then a new high, something similar to last cycle. But I think like first quarter, basically from now to, I don't know, I really like that March 10th, but like somewhere around then, I just think the odds of like something similar happening, it seems right. And again, if that plays out that way, where we do make a higher high, especially, we make a higher high or something like that, and have a pullback, I'll tell you, like, that will like greatly increase the odds of October being a real serious date. If we see something similar, right? So anyway, here's kind of this channel, and you'll have to forgive me because I know that I've went over this privately with a few of you in here. I don't remember if I did this with everybody or not, but I know I've went over this obviously with some of you guys in here. So yeah, at least it might be 2 more streams. I think that's fair too. because I think like that we definitely could have a lot of other I agree. Like it's probably gonna it's probably like one more stream probably isn't really gonna cover in the depth that like I want to cover this stuff, because again, beginning of the year, I think it's really important to try to set this up, right? Like set yourself up for the year, find your levels, and have a trading plan for the year, and be ready like as best as you can, right? And map out your different scenarios. If this does this, this is how I'm going to trade this. Like this is because this is why. It's better to have your plan as ready as it can be now, and have good reasons to want to trade the way that you are, versus being in the heat of the moment. And if we're going absolutely parabolically, like being able to think clearly within that time frame, you probably better to do it now before it happens, versus like, oh my god, we're at 140k, we're going to a mill, like, you know what I mean? You know how people get, and then it's like you lose sight of what happened. Then before you know it, you're like, holy shit, we're at 80k again. What happened? Like we were just here, you know what I'm saying? Like it's like it happens to everybody. So I like to map out, like, again, the stream to me is very important, because I swear it's like setting up how I am going to trade this year. Like this is like I'm doing this for myself just as much as I'm doing it for you guys. But yeah, so anyway, have your plans now, be ready, levels get violated, know what you're probably going to do before everybody else does, right? Like have it ready, do it with the level head. Price isn't doing anything spectacular today. It looks really good, honestly, but like we're at 97k. Like if we hit 80k, already know that that's important to you, versus sitting there saying, oh my god, I don't know, like it looks kind of man, we were at 108, now we're at 80. I don't know if I want, because that's what people do, right? You're like, I don't want to buy, and then you wake up and you're like, holy shit, we're at 95 again, why didn't I buy? Well, that's how a lot of people are. But just have your plan ready, be ready to trade it, and if it comes, do it. And already know, like, I'm taking a trade here. If it goes below this level, probably wrong, close it, but like have it ready now. Anyway. Okay. So two different things, which I think is kind of interesting. So you have this channel, which this was the first thing that I did. I'm gonna undo this. I'm gonna hide that. So this channel is kind of like an encompassing, I would say like it's an important region. It's been an important region for price. I more care about the highs and lows of the channel. The in between doesn't really tell me a whole lot. I care about the highs, which, by the way, it's basically, I don't know why this one shifted a little bit, but like this is basically like, oh, trying to get this wick. It's my guess. Yeah. Anyway, so like these are like your cycle to, oh no, it's this wick I wanted to include. That's why, because he had like a double. That's right. So basically the top of this green channel so far, why is it significant? Because it's the highs of the cycle. Okay. So you had it starts off at basically, and I'll tell you why I made it a channel instead of just like a pure trend line. That's kind of what you saw on the other one, which I thought was really interesting. But I made it a channel because it's like, it's just a region, it's a zone. So like when price is inside of the channel, which by the way, again, it's not perfect. Like look at the bottom of the channel. That's not really as relevant to me. But it just tells me that we're in, I mean, holy shit, think about this. Okay. Which is so like this got to put your trader hat on and take off your like, oh my God, we're going to $1 million hat. This is being reasonable. And I don't think this is not, like, I think this is being very reasonable. So you have your prior cycles here that are in this channel. So you have your 2017 top, you have your 2021 top. Even November didn't. Now, holy shit, if November high had come up just a little bit higher and given you another touch, that would have been insane. It didn't. Got really close. Before it, fell off and went to the center of the earth and everybody hated Bitcoin again, and then here we are. So we're back in the channel, which I'll tell you that basically the only thing that says to me is like this kind of gives me a reason to think well, the way that I'm thinking about Bitcoin, and that, man, we might kind of be near a local top at least, right? We might be in a scenario where, we make another high, and then we got a bit of a pullback to deal with before, at least having more upside. I don't necessarily expect this to play out perfectly. Like, I mean, again, this, like, man, if this 69K just came up a bit higher, that would have been really good. But all this is telling me is you're looking for this. To me, all this channel is it visually gives you a rate of change. Okay, first cycle, and I mean first cycle in terms of like this channel's being used. First cycle, second cycle, third cycle. Both the prior cycles, when you got into this channel, it was a time to pay attention. Was it not? Like, time to pay attention. Now, this one's kind of messed up because it's the whole damn thing's in there. I get that. But what I mean is, like, definitely the high. That's again, the bottom of the channel, again, I don't really care about that too much. But the highs, yes. But when price was in this channel last cycle, just gave you a window of like price that says, man, you're in here. As long as you're in here, it's good, but you start to kind of dip out of it, and it's like you can. I like here, you got to close below here, and the thing just nuked all the way down to 28K, right, before getting back into the channel. So, what does this mean for here? All this tells me, again, you have a rate of change. That tells me for the current cycle that we're in, it has a similar rate of change from, even just measuring it from here. You can you can throw this away if you want. Because again, to me, the only thing that I really care a lot about is the high of 2017. Although, to be fair, if you look at the support in 18, if you look at the bottom of the channel, it actually was really well respected. Funny enough, like that actually, I would go with that. Like that'd be okay. And even here, gets in. So if you zoom in, gets in, support, lost channel low. Oh my God, pain, suffering. Comes back up, resistance, pullback. Here, doesn't, again, if it gave you this high, that would have been the cleanest of all clean. Like this channel would be like goated. And then support, lost channel, you're screwed. Okay. So even it looks messy, but arguably, again, channel, I would say, very relevant. Now zoom in here. The channel low isn't holding very well, I would say. It's kind of, there's a lot of noise here. So I don't like that. But again, really, there's two things that I think, but that, as far as that goes, it's the least important to me. I don't care too much about the channel low. Although, I mean, again, it's close. It's not perfect, but it's close. What matters to me is the top of this damn thing, which, by the way, is coming at about 112 right now. And as time progresses, getting into the beginning of the green box, March 10th, you're looking at about 115 or so. Now, again, you had like this poke above. It's not going to be perfect. And again, this channel is probably going to stop working at some point. Like, right? But anyway, rate of change. That's what I care about. Measuring where we currently are in this cycle, you can make an argument that we're at a similar place as we were last cycle near the high. Would everybody agree with that? If you disagree, tell me, because I'd like to know. So again, all I'm showing you is that as far as rate of change goes, we have caught back up this cycle. By the way, for those of you, like, when you have a chart that looks like this, this is a beautiful, beautiful bullish chart, right? It's been like, this was the most constructive part of this chart, honestly. So you have a few points that were really constructive. You have this, everybody hated this, but this was very constructive. It was the 25K to 32K range. Remember that? I don't even need to freaking put my cursor there. I already remember this thing, like, because we were trading the shit out of this thing. But like this was very constructive. When you broke up from here, it was basically up only, right? Nice base gets built here. Big leg here, 8-month consolidation. Again, when we broke this thing, you had even got your back test, rejection, broke. Oh, it's just moon, right? Bullish case, we're building another range. This is why people hate ranges. But like, if we spent some serious time here, you need to, like, in order to take like big legs to the upside, like really, that's kind of what you'd want to see. Otherwise things kind of tend to run out of gas, right? The less support that gets built up, which this is pretty good. So I argue that this is still good support. That's why I think we make another high. But like, you want to see, you know, at some point though, like things coming back down, right? I mean, this is the truth. This is how markets work. Things don't go up only forever. But we're kind of in the territory of where I say, like, you put your cautious hat on. And it's not that I think the world's ending, but it's just, this is just saying, like, we're in a territory again, where, you know, it's probably not a bad idea to like pay a lot of attention to what's going on. And we've had a move from 15K up to 100, 108. That's incredible. Really good move. But you know, as we kind of like keep being in this channel, I would just be a little aware of that. I would be a little aware of that. Did I lose? I did, huh? Oh my god, I lost that line, that trend line that I had. I lost that trend line that I had, but that's okay. Put it back here in a second. Try to think of this. Okay, so now top of the channel, arguably been very good so far. You've had 3 touches. Confirms a trend, right? These two are really close to each other though, so I'd say 2.5. Kind of not perfect. But we are getting really close to that, like another touch, and I think like we are gonna get one. I would be a little aware of that. But the rate of change for this actually isn't that strong. You know, it's I don't know what that means. But what I would say is just be a little cautious. But I had on my chart the and I think if I go to a daily, it'll show the pivot. Yes. So 120. There's a few things. I think it's like, I actually think that I actually think that we could get a move up to this region. I'm looking for places that could be like pretty good local, like, well, I say local, that's not the right term. I would say like more medium term tops. If we get the scenario that we've been talking about now for a while, it's really like top of channel and then kind of like, you know, what would be not good. Is like if you break this rate of change, okay, which it will at some point. Like it's probably, well, hopefully it does, because if it does and it's to the top side, we're all going to be very excited. But what I could see, and this is really similar to a different analysis that we did. And again, I don't know why that Rose. You remember Rose? You guys are around last cycle. Like we nailed the shit out of that one. I think we short. Was it like 60 something cents down, and it went down to like 5 cents or something after. Anyway, what you would be worried, Goosey? Yeah, you damn right we did. We nailed Rose. I was like flawless trading. But what would be a similar play to that? Because if you remember, that one was channel based, right? There was a really good channel. What would be similar to that? Close your eyes. But like if we got something like this, right? And then this. So you want a sign of weakness, a sign to make you a little scared. It's actually getting above this, which would, by the way, be really bullish, right? People would be like, holy shit, guys, we're like going to the moon. But like, as far as this channel goes, which encompasses some pretty historic PA, right? Getting above and then getting back below, I'd be a little scared if that happened. I'd be kind of like, well, I mean, scared of like, damn it, like we're probably, you know, gonna have a nice pullback. But that could be a very, very significant high. So why I'm saying this is that, you know, to the upside, I have some ideas about which I probably need to spend a bit more time formulating like good, thoughtful analysis behind these levels. But for the one that I'll share with you now, because we're an hour and 40 minutes into this damn video already, I think a range between kind of like 117 to 121 is like really interesting as far as like a big high. And it could just be like the high going into this green zone, right? Like the beginning of the March high that pulls us back, and then maybe we spend some time doing some crazy shit before we hit October. And October would give you like if that rings true like it's done previously, that would be the high somewhere around there, right? So what does that mean? That like we're probably going higher. Like this year is probably going like we're, you know, in October, my guess is, you know, hopefully we're like fairly higher than we are now. But like for the next few months, what I think is kind of relevant or like interesting to think about is something like this, where like if I gave you a kind of like a it would be, it's not bearish now because it's freaking a lot higher than we're currently sitting. But if we got some play like this, and why this is relevant is because this made me immediately think about rows, which is the same setup. But it gives you the deviation outside of like a historic channel, by the way, right? Like this would be crazy because it would be a big fake out of you breaking out of this. What do you expect to happen? So you go back to that when we were trading rows, it's the same thing. I'll say the same thing here. What do you expect to happen? What do you want to see happen when you break a channel? The top of an ascending channel, by the way. That's typically when you see the parabolic move. And a lot of those times it happens to be parabolic blow off tops, right? So either way, it's not great, kind of. But like at least a parabolic move to set up something different. That would be like and that could end up being like a really freaking bullish thing that happens. What you don't want to see is a break of, again, what I would deem to be like a pretty good historic channel that has really good points, like that has good reasons to want to pay attention to the top of this. If you break out of this, you're expecting really a parabolic move. You're expecting a big fireworks, right? If you see a fake out like this and you get acceptance back to the inside of that channel, that's a short all day long. And that would be a pretty, I would be pretty nasty, especially if the timing worked out to be kind of into that pivot, right? So it would be, which one was it? This is a time zone? Yeah. So something like this. It would be interesting, right? So you come into that, see some kind of deviation, go into this, acceptance back inside. Oh boy, that'd be good enough for me. And honestly, like which by the way, yeah, so that's where that window comes from. Again, this is like spitballing, and you're trying to like give yourself potential scenarios to watch out for. I think that's a very good one. If I see something like this, oh boy. Because honestly, from here, like this could be the move that gives you, like we could see the pivot come into play. Something crazy like that. That's a pretty significant pullback. What would that even be? Yeah, it's like 30%. That would be crazy, right? But like that, if you're following last cycle, that would be something similar. I would expect 50. But you know, you could get the pivot to pivot play, something like that. Like that's absolutely like this lines up pretty well. But I would be a little cognizant of that. If we do start to break out of this channel, this is one I'd watch. And I would be, again, you expect to see like really strong continuation basically immediately. You don't want to see this channel come back. Which, like, I mean, maybe you would, but at a much later date, right? That's how you know, like, we're switching to something different. And that, you know, things are, I mean, the whole phase, like, going to the moon is like, you know, we would be going to the moon at that point. And I hope that that's what happens. But, you know, again, if I had to pick a scenario that I do not want to see, you know, for you know, if you're like really bullish on things, that's probably it. So as we sit, okay. I think probably the last thing was that other trend line that I had. Try to fix this. That other trend line that I had was really interesting. I think it was this high. This high. Yep. So if I hide this channel temporarily, delete this. So why is this trend line relevant? And did you just make up some bullshit to make a line fit and make it look good? Not really. I'll tell you why. So again, cycle high, cycle high. Yes, you have wicks. So again, this is just another. It's the rate of change indication, right? It like gives you like that's what a lot of like that's what trend lines are. It gives you rate of change. So yeah, you had a couple like wicks up through here prior to like the move that made its current all-time high, but this was a higher price than here. Just the rate of change slowed. That's your third touch. So I don't think that this is the case. But that would be kind of terrifying if the high was already in and we didn't know it. I don't know why I want to end the video like that, but this third touch, I don't put like a ton of weight onto this, but like let's say that we spend a bit of time and then we make like a slightly again, it's the same thing though, right? It's the same thing. Like you come up here and you make a deviation and you get and then you come back below it, it's the same thing. You come up above this line and you make a deviation. It's the same thing. I'm not saying it's going to be like this, but I'm just telling you that's why like it's the same thing though. Like similar play. You don't want to see that. So like having this touch here, which by the way was like the high. That was like just freaking as perfect as it gets. You got a pretty serious pullback from there. If you break this trend line, okay, I would probably have it on your chart too, like your high time frame chart if you have one, like just to pay attention to. Breaking it to the upside, very bullish. That's like holy shit, right? Like let's go. Coming back below it, not really something you want to see. Like just isn't. This is so you treat it just like anything else. You get a deviation or an SFP or something like that. Like if you SFP the high into here and then you know we did it at a later date, and it's on a weekly time frame, so who the hell knows? Like we could have a move, you know, very like parabolic looking move into like 111, 112, and then just for some reason a day or two later we nuke really hard, and then that we close the weekly below this trend line, something like that. That's the same thing. This is the same PA. Okay, so all relevant to everything I said. Just give you like different angles to come from, different analysis, different things to look at, different things to pay attention to that I think are relevant. But you know, to the downside, so just to kind of recap a little bit, to the downside, the levels are very clear to me. And why? Well, it helps that like we have support, we have price action like that. We obviously traded through all these levels. So like I have a much more, I have way more confidence in like in saying that. Finding levels where you've never traded, and finding targets for that, they're different animals. They're different animals, and it's much harder to, you know, come up with like concrete levels that you would be looking at. So I see that this pull was done from our last leg. So I am kind of curious. One pull that I would do is from the low to here. If we're gonna, and this is gonna give you like a really, you know, a really interesting target, don't you think? Did you see that? That's your 1-to-1 at 107, which by the way was confluent with this trend line and other things. So the measured move for this cycle, as far as these legs go, you hit it. And I hate ending with stuff like that, but if you can get above it. That's where some of these bigger targets come into play. So if I had to pick a number where, you know, we start to get above, you know, it's clear that we're moving higher. One that sits on my radar right now is this number. Which by the way is the pull that we just did. Did you see that? It's the same thing anytime we do Fib extensions, which is in the video. When your 1-to-1 is so well respected, the next number you look for is your 1618 or significant top. Take that back. It doesn't have to be like the top, but like probably gets pretty well respected, is my guess. So yeah. So for those of you, again, 1-to-1 into resistance. And again, this is like if you're mapping out future levels that haven't been hit. That's why I love Fibonacci. That's why I love measured moves, right? This is your measured move. So a pullback from here makes a lot of sense. Consolidation under here makes a lot of sense. You break above 107 again, 107,689, which was your measured move. You start to get acceptance above that, particularly hopefully above this trend line. That sets you up for some of these other levels. And again, there's kind of like a lot of noise here. But if I had to pick one, so it's going to be a little bit easier if I go down to a daily time frame, because the pivot is sitting here at 121. Which by the way, so like here, your 1618 and your R2, it's like somewhere within this window. So like I feel pretty good about that. I would probably draw, this is where you'd see a box of fear. Just kidding, but like, you know, like a reasonable area to keep an eye on. With kind of a bit more emphasis being on front running your R2 to a degree, just because the 1-to-1 did it was perfect. So the next level, you clear 108, and if this, you know, this is a reasonable area to look. So if I had to pick numbers for this year, again, to the downside, it's pretty clear to me like where I'd want to be a participant. To the top side, it's a little harder. It's not a little harder, it's a lot harder. But reasonable areas, I would say, so that I would kind of map out for you would be somewhere along this line. You know, I would say like something like this. And it's going to be really confusing. I would be like, and so if we're looking for kind of a region that might play out kind of like last cycle did. Okay, so give you my final potential thought. So if you remember, we have this green, it's gonna get really confusing. This green box is the time in between the fib dates. So this is like your fib zone. Okay. What would kind of be interesting is if we had something like this. So like if we came up, that actually, if you're doing time wise, it would actually happen sooner. So if we did something like this and then did this, right? So like we broke down, made a high, and actually like came into your pivot. That last one probably be, I don't know if it would be like that, but you get my point. It's like we come up, we make the higher high that I think is going to happen. Like I think that we can have happen into a region that's kind of like this. You get your deviation, you get your serious pullback. I mean, I don't know if we go all the way down, but I'm just saying, like, you know, this is kind of a region I would be looking for. And then October comes, and we make our high, something like that. Does that make sense? This is kind of like, so if I had to pick a roadmap, kind of like a roadmap for this year on if it's going to rhyme with prior cycles, be something similar. Time-wise, if the fib times keep being absolute money, this is kind of like, you know, obviously it's not going to look like freaking these stupid lines, but like, you know, you're going to get something, arguably like something kind of close to this. With like, you know, as I'm not going to refine this because it's not really worth doing right now. But if we come up into this level and, you know, and it would change my analysis if we came down to 80 first, right? So like that would be, you know, if we came to 80 around, that's, so this is the flip side of that. If we came into 80K, kind of like these lower support levels coming into March, then maybe that's a good pivot, a good, what I would say, more bullish pivot. That makes sense to everybody. But if we're following kind of like previous cycle and what seems to make a bit of sense, it'd be something similar like this. And I wouldn't be expecting, like if we did, even if we got this kind of deviation above this trend line, you hit a major level that we, you know, I wouldn't be, last cycle we got a 56% pullback. I don't anticipate a 56% pullback. Like you're going to get, I don't think you're going to get as serious of a move. But I think a move down to 80, you know, like a decent pullback after this makes sense. Profit taking, you know, kind of coming into like a quieter period. Summers are usually not as exciting. Take a bit of risk off. Who knows? But it makes sense to me. And then gearing up for, you know, some kind of similar, you know, like making making what I would say is like could be a final high, you know, for the year. Okay, not saying ever, but making, you know, a big move up here, 140, like this level, man, that would be insane, wouldn't it? You know, at least like making something like, I would say it's probably going to be a significant higher, is my guess. But this level just really sticks out to me. And then, you know, again, I don't want to like give 9,000 scenarios, but like if obviously we start to break higher than this, then you have your other, you know, then you're looking, whoops. You know, then you're looking at like ridiculous targets, which the only last one that I'm going to do, I mean, it's really this. Which is your, I mean, it'd be what, 166K? Yeah. So like your your 1-to-1 hit so well, 2-to-1, your next one's at 166. So yeah. Anyway, what I'll say is like we just started the year. As time progresses, we see kind of more things develop, which I know we're gonna see. We're gonna see some interesting price action, I think, pretty soon. I don't think it's gonna take that long. I don't really expect to range until March. We could, but I don't think so. I think we'll see something a bit more, you know, a bit more interesting soon. But definitely something to watch, pay attention for as the year progresses. We'll kind of follow along how this video, right? We'll follow along and make adjustments as we need to. But that's kind of what my thoughts are. That's kind of what my thoughts are for this year, which the majority of these thoughts were made right here during this video. Like this is just kind of spurred, you know. I didn't have this. I absolutely didn't have these mapped out, anything like this. So that's just what I think right now. It's kind of my first thought about this year. Anybody have any questions? This is actually perfect. It's we're at an hour and 59 minutes of this stream, so it's probably a good area to wrap up. But I want to leave a second for any last minute questions or anything like that. And know that like we need to have at least one more stream relatively soon. This is a big stream, so I'll probably give it some time to digest, but maybe Monday we could run, if you guys want to do that. On Monday we can do like ETH and alts, something like that, and like maybe like traditional markets too, because we haven't, you know, crypto's been so freaking exciting. Like we focus more on that again, but you know, we should look at traditional markets and kind of see what those are saying too, because it's gonna, you know, it's gonna have an influence. But you know, we'll see where that second stream gets us. So if you guys want, pick a day. you know, if Monday works for you guys, if Tuesday is better, I don't know, but like we can pick a day, preferably like I'd say like earlier next week, because it's like you want this information. You know, I want to do this like quicker than, you know, like sooner rather than later, because this helps me out a lot too. We'll do at least one more stream, cover ETH and alt, and then if we need to do a third one to like cover like shittier alts or, you know, like more risky stuff, and you know, so I'm happy to do it. It's just depends on what you guys want. So, anyway, hopefully this stream was helpful. I know I feel like I unpacked a lot of stuff, a lot of different, like, kind of just went for it. So I mean, geez, even for myself, like I might, I'm not, I okay. I don't think I've ever rewatched one of my streams. I don't think I did. Like, I mean, for editing purposes, like, you know, some of like my old videos and stuff I've rewatched, but like I might actually watch this one again. Just have it playing like in my free time. So that I can remember everything that I said. But yeah, it was definitely off the cuff. It was just you guys heard it as it came out. So I have nothing pre-planned for this whatsoever. Yeah. No questions. We're gonna end it here. All good. So I probably I might make this available on YouTube. I feel like I don't know, I feel like it's time. But yeah, 2025, I'm telling you, like just be paying attention. We're at some interesting times again, especially March. Like for me, it's first like I think of the first quarter, we're probably gonna see a high get put in. It just feels that way. It looks that way. But Fib says, you know, be paying more attention to kind of like the March-ish time frame. But man, I'll tell you that October, I don't know what the hell we're gonna be doing in like August, September, and you're probably gonna get a better feeling for how serious that October level is. But man, that is one I'm not gonna miss. I'll tell you that. That is like looks really good. So anyway, I'll catch y'all later. We're gonna do another stream. You know, we'll do another stream on Monday or something. Just whatever time works out for you guys. We'll cover all the other stuff. Have a good weekend.
Right.